I don't know how many times I've written these words, but each time it feels less like a confession and more like a rehearsal, like I'm saying lines that were carved into me long before I was born. I wake up in this apartment, and it feels like mine, but it also feels staged, like a set someone built after reading the fragments of my memory. The furniture sits where I expect it. The wallpaper peels in exactly the way I half remember from years ago, but there's no weight to it, no history. It's a facsimile, and when I breathe too hard, I swear the walls ripple as though the whole place were a canvas stretched too thin. Pixel greets me the way she always has, leaping lightly onto my chest, purring like a motor pressed against my ribs. But then she tilts her head, and her eyes don't just shine. They fracture like a prism catching light that shouldn't exist in this room. For an instant, I see shapes reflected in her pupils, intersecting lines, impossible curves, the sigil I swore I left behind at the motel. I blink, and it's gone, but the unease lingers, heavy as a sickness. It's not just that Pixel sees something I don't, it's that she remembers something I can't. The sigil itself keeps following me. At first it was faint, a scratch above the headboard I thought had always been there. Then it showed up on the condensation in the bathroom mirror, clear as handwriting, forming the word, remember. My hand hovered, terrified, before I wiped it away, but the glass didn't smear. It stayed clean, as though the message had never been written. I tell myself it's hallucination, but the skin on my forearm betrays me. One morning I woke up with it burning faintly beneath the surface, like ink trapped under my veins. I clawed at it until my arm bled, but the mark vanished before the pain even registered, leaving me to wonder if I had scrubbed it away or if it had just sunk deeper. The apartment itself betrays me in small ways. The front door creaks, its paint chipping, but if I catch it from the corner of my eye, it isn't wood at all. It's the black steel gate of room 6, bolted and sealed. The hallway stretches longer each time I walk it. Yesterday, I swear I counted 22 steps from my door to the stairwell. Today, I walked and walked, but the end never came. Every door I passed bore the number 6, even the one I knew belonged to my neighbor. The air grew colder with each step until I turned back in panic and somehow found myself back at my own apartment without ever reversing direction. And then there's the phone. It doesn't sit on my desk, but I hear it all the same. A shrill ring that threads itself into my dreams, ringing in the exact pitch of my pulse. I jolt awake with my hand reaching for a receiver that isn't there. Sometimes in that blurred moment before consciousness fully drags me back, I hear my own voice answer. Flat, rehearsed, clinical. Subject MB, exposure increasing. I don't just hear the words. I feel them forming on my tongue like I've said them before, over and over in 100 lives that aren't mine. I've started catching fragments of déjà vu that feel more like stolen memory. Pixel freezing in the dark, her eyes blinking open into mine. I've seen it, not just yesterday, but months ago, years ago, in a cycle I can't name. The doors all marked with 6. I remember walking that corridor already, turning the same corners, retracing the same echo. The girl in white, the subway air, the ice machine humming at 3:15. They don't belong to separate stories anymore. They're scars burned across my mind, proof that this isn't the first time I've lived them, proof that this is the 48th time. The photograph told me so. Cycle 47, memory suppression unstable. Those words haunt me more than any shadow ever could. It means the repetition is real. It means there were at least 47 versions of me before this one, each stumbling through the same rules, each failing to survive, each erased and reloaded into another version of this nightmare. How many times did I write these words already? How many times did I warn myself and then forget? The more I dwell on it, the more the world fractures. I went to the grocery store yesterday, only to find it wasn't 3 blocks away anymore. It was 8, then 12, then gone entirely when I turned the corner. The streets fold in on themselves, buildings vanish or replicate, like the entire city is a maze reconfigured with each cycle. The only constants are the motifs, the ringing phone, the locked door, the girl in white, the reflection. They appear in every permutation, as if to remind me there's no escape, only repetition. And I think I'm starting to understand. The rules aren't meant to protect me from what's outside. They're meant to measure how long it takes before I remember. Every broken rule is just another checkpoint, another test, another way to scrape at the layers of memory suppression until the truth bleeds through. Pixel curls beside me as I write this, her tiny frame trembling in her sleep. She twitches like she's dreaming, but when I lean closer, I hear it. Not a meow, not a purr, a voice. My voice, whispering from her throat. You've been here before. And I know she's right. I thought I understood the pattern, that the phone and the door and the sigil were the anchors holding this nightmare together. But I was wrong. They were just fragments, pieces of a greater whole, and tonight the veil finally tore wide enough for me to see it. 7 of them. 7 gates, layered across reality like scars in the fabric of the world, impossible to mistake once you know how to look. It began in the apartment. I woke to the sound of glass cracking, a sharp line slicing across the window above my bed. But when I leaned closer, the fracture wasn't in the glass, it was in the air beyond it. The skyline of the city shimmered and split, bending into a vertical seam that pulsed faintly with light. For a heartbeat, I thought it was lightning trapped in slow motion, but then the edges of the crack folded inward, revealing a hollow passage framed in black iron. A gate. I staggered back, heart hammering, but the seam didn't vanish. It stayed there, throbbing faintly, and then more fractures spread across the apartment like veins in a dying leaf. In the bathroom mirror, another gate pushed through the silvered surface, its frame warped like a rib cage turned inside out. In the hallway outside my door, the peeling paint stretched into the outline of a third gate, its edges wet and glistening as though freshly carved. Every direction I turned, the world produced another. Until there were 7 in total, all overlapping in impossible geometry, each one bleeding into the others like reflections in shattered glass. They weren't still. The gates shivered, shifting in and out of alignment, sometimes transparent, sometimes solid, each opening into a place I both recognized and couldn't accept. Through one, I saw the subway platform, empty but alive with whispers, the tracks glowing faintly red, like veins beneath skin. Through another, the motel parking lot, neon flickering, a lone figure pacing in circles beneath the buzzing light. The third showed the stairwell of my apartment, stretched infinitely downward, every landing marked with the number 6. The fourth led into a hospital corridor, sterile white tiles drenched in a sickly green glow, doors slamming shut in rhythmic succession like a heartbeat. The fifth revealed a dark forest, trees bending inward, their branches tangled into the shape of faces screaming silently. The sixth opened onto water, black and endless, with something pale swimming just beneath the surface. And the seventh, the final gate, showed nothing at all, just pure darkness, thick and heavy, darker than absence, darker than memory. I wanted to count them out loud, to steady myself, to confirm there really were 7, but the words burned in my throat before I could say them. I remembered the rule, the one scratched faintly into the paper the manager gave me, the one that had shifted when I read it again last night. Do not count the gates aloud. I don't know what would happen if I did, but my tongue refused to form the words like some deeper part of me already knew the cost. The gates pulsed together, synchronizing like organs in a single body, and with each pulse, I felt my chest tighten, my pulse sinking against my will. And then came the voices. Not from outside, but from within the gates themselves, layered, discordant, whispering in tones that seemed to be made of my own breath. One of them was mine, or some version of mine, calling from the subway gate. Michael. Subject MB. Do you remember now? Another voice came from the hospital gate, older, worn, broken. Cycle 32. Termination incomplete. A third from the motel. Don't break the rules. Don't break yourself. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it made no difference. The voices weren't entering through sound. They were blooming from inside my skull. The words overlapped until they became one steady chant. You've done this before. You'll do it again. Remember, remember, remember. The room tilted, the floor bowing under my feet, and for a second, I thought the gates would collapse inward and swallow me whole. Pixel hissed suddenly, a sharp, unnatural sound that split the air like a blade. She stood at the center of the room, her back arched, fur bristling, eyes glowing faintly as though lit from behind. She faced the seventh gate, the one of pure darkness, and her body shook as though straining to keep it closed. For the first time, I understood she wasn't just a pet, wasn't just my anchor. She was part of this cycle too, bound to the pattern in ways I hadn't dared imagine. Her hiss reverberated, and the seventh gate stilled, its edges freezing as though locked in place. But the others pulsed harder, angrier, as if protesting the interruption. Shadows stretched across the room, clawing at the walls, and in their writhing forms I saw hands, faces, fragments of people I almost recognized. My mother's eyes, my own mouth, the twisted grin of the motel girl in white, all staring, all mouthing the same word, open. I staggered forward, drawn like a moth to fire. My hand lifted without permission, reaching for the nearest gate, the subway, its red glow beckoning. And in that instant, I knew with a bone-deep certainty that if I touched it, I would be pulled through, dragged back into the cycle again, forced to replay it until I failed once more. My arm trembled, inches from the gate's surface, the heat of it stinging my skin like fire. Then, the reflection of my face shimmered on its surface. Not the face I see in the mirror, but the one from the photograph, older, hollow-eyed, defeated. And it spoke without sound. Do not open what cannot be closed. The words slammed into me with the force of a blow, and I stumbled back, gasping, hands seared as though burned. The gates quivered, their outlines flickering, and one by one they began to fade. The subway collapsed into shadow, the motel's neon blinked out, the forest dissolved into ash, until only the seventh gate remained, pulsing faintly, daring me to look closer. Pixel growled low, a sound I'd never heard from her before, her small body vibrating with impossible force. And then the gate winked out, leaving only the apartment walls behind, cracked and trembling like they'd barely survived the strain of holding them all. I fell to my knees, shaking, sweat dripping into my eyes. There were 7 of them. 7 gates. And they weren't just doors. They were cycles. Pathways to every failed attempt, every broken memory, every erased life. And they wanted me back. I told myself I wouldn't touch them, that I'd keep my distance after what I saw last night. But the gates don't need me to open them. They want me inside. And when they want something, they take it. Tonight, it was the subway that claimed me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, head in my hands, the rules spread out before me in ink that wouldn't stop shifting when the ringing started again. Not the phone this time. The sound came from the window, high-pitched, metallic, like steel rails screaming against each other. The glass rippled, bending inward, and before I could stand, the room tilted violently and gravity betrayed me. My chair toppled, my body pitched forward, and in the next blink, I was no longer in my apartment. I was standing on a subway platform that smelled of rust and damp stone, my breath clouding in air far colder than it should have been. The place was empty, but not silent. The hum of electricity ran through the rails like blood through veins, alive, angry. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered in sick patterns, long stretches of shadow broken by moments of blinding white. And in those moments, I saw them. Figures pressed against the tiled walls, dozens of them, too thin, too pale, their eyes wide open but unblinking. They didn't move, not even when the light cut across their faces. Only when the dark fell again did I hear the scrape of their feet shifting, as if they lived in the blackness between the seconds. I backed toward the edge of the platform, my heart hammering, when a voice rose from the rails themselves, my own voice. Subject MB, Cycle 41, breach at Gate 2, memory instability confirmed. The words vibrated in the metal, climbing up through my shoes, into my bones. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it was useless. The sound wasn't entering from outside. It was growing inside me. The figures stirred at the echo, heads turning toward me in perfect unison, and for the first time I saw their faces clearly. They were mine, every one of them. Dozens of versions of my face stretched across the walls, their mouths opening and closing like fish, whispering words I couldn't hear but somehow understood. Fail again. The air shuddered as if a train was approaching, but no headlights cut the tunnel. Instead, the darkness deepened, swelling forward like liquid, and from it came a girl. The girl in white. Her dress was tattered at the edges, dragging across the tracks without ever picking up dirt. She moved too slowly to be walking, too smoothly to be human. Her face, as always, was a blur of shadow, features refusing to resolve, but her mouth was clear, smiling, stretching wider than it should have. She pointed at me with one trembling hand, and the voices of the other selves rose into a chorus, chanting "Open, open, open." I stumbled back, my foot hitting the yellow line, the edge of the platform crumbling beneath me. I caught myself, clutching a metal pillar slick with condensation, and for a split second, the entire platform folded. The tiles bent like paper, the ceiling dropped closer, the tunnel stretched longer, until I realized I wasn't standing in a subway at all. I was inside the gate itself, swallowed whole. The world shifted with my breath, memories bleeding into the walls. I saw myself answering the motel phone. I saw myself chasing Pixel through an endless hallway. I saw myself clawing at my own skin to erase the sigil burned into it. All of it happening at once, layered over each other until I couldn't tell which version of me was real. The girl's hand lowered, and the ground beneath me cracked. Through the fissures, I saw other places. The motel parking lot with its broken neon, the apartment hallway lined with doors all numbered 6, the hospital corridor with its slamming doors. They weren't separate anymore. The gates were stacked, layered, all spilling into this place like rivers converging. And in the center of it all was me, multiplied, fractured, every cycle folding on top of the next. Then one of them stepped forward. A version of me I hadn't seen before. His eyes were hollow, black pits that seemed to stretch endlessly inward, his skin paper thin, veins crawling beneath like worms. He reached out with a shaking hand and touched my chest, and when he spoke, his voice was mine but distorted, full of static. "We are the lock. You are the key. Stop opening what cannot be closed." The contact seared me like fire, the sigil flaring across my chest in lines of burning light. I screamed, tried to push him away, but his body dissolved into smoke, sinking into me like breath inhaled too deep. The other versions pressed closer, their whispers rising, and for a terrifying moment I felt myself splintering, fragments of memory tearing loose, as though I was about to become one of them, another face in the wall. Pixel's hiss cut through it again, sharp and desperate, though I had no idea how she was here. I spun and saw her at the far end of the platform, impossibly small against the collapsing tunnel, her fur bristling, eyes blazing like molten gold. She yowled once and the sound cracked the air like thunder. The shadows recoiled, the chanting faltered, and the world shuddered. The girl in white tilted her head, smile fading, and for the first time, I saw something behind her face. A reflection. My reflection, staring back at me from within her blurred features. And it mouthed one word I didn't want to hear. Remember. Then the ground gave way, and I was falling, dragged through a vortex of sound and shadow, all 7 gates flashing by in impossible sequence. Subway, motel, hospital, forest, water, apartment, void. Each one clawed at me as I tumbled past, each leaving its mark, each etching another fragment of memory into me, until my mind was raw with overlapping voices. And then I was back, sprawled on the floor of my apartment, the table overturned, the rules scattered like confetti. My chest still burned with the sigil, my ears still rang with whispers. Pixel crouched beside me, her eyes still glowing faintly, her body trembling from whatever she had done to pull me out. I reached for her, but she hissed, retreating into the shadows as though afraid of me now. I lay there in the dark, gasping, every nerve on fire, and realized the truth. I hadn't been pulled into the subway. I'd been pulled into myself, into the layers of lives that came before. And if I kept resisting, if I kept touching those gates, soon I wouldn't come back at all. I'd be trapped in the walls, another version whispering fail again to the next me. But the worst part, the part that made my stomach twist as I forced myself upright, wasn't that I had seen them. It was that some part of me wanted to go back. I should have locked myself in, boarded up the door, ignored every creak and flicker. But the gates don't wait for permission. They choose when to bleed through, and tonight, the one that opened was the hospital. I knew it the moment the air changed. The smell of antiseptic crawled under the door, sharp enough to sting my eyes, the light in my apartment dimming until it matched the sterile green glow of fluorescent bulbs. I blinked once, and the carpet was gone, replaced by linoleum tiles that stretched endlessly into a corridor too long to belong anywhere real. The doors lining the hallway slammed in sequence, bang, 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 each one marked with the number 6. At the far end, a gurney squealed forward on rusted wheels. No one pushing it, no weight upon it, yet the wheels screamed as if burdened. I froze, clutching the wall, my heart hammering, when the intercom above me crackled to life. Not static this time. Words. My own voice, calm, clinical, stripped of emotion. Subject M.B. Hospital loop. Memory resistance at 32%. The sound echoed down the corridor, repeating itself from every speaker until I wanted to claw at my ears. I told myself to turn back, to run, but the hallway shifted with every step. I'd move left only to find myself deeper in. Move right, and the tiles stretched longer. The walls weren't walls anymore, but screens flickering faintly, showing flashes of scenes I half recognized. A waiting room where a child cried, though I couldn't see her face. A figure in scrubs holding a clipboard, features blurred, but the voice unmistakable when it spoke my name. And then another scene. Me, restrained to a bed, a sigil branded into my skin as I thrashed against leather straps. My screams didn't echo in the room, only in the recording that played back a second later, distorted, detached. And then the gurney reached me. It halted inches away, the metal frame shuddering like it was breathing, and slowly the sheet upon it sank, the outline of a body pressing through. I knew that shape. Too small, too fragile. Pixel. I yanked the sheet away, but instead of her, I found my own body, pale, still, chest carved open, ribs spread apart. My heart wasn't there. In its place, the sigil pulsed faintly, carved into the cavity, glowing with each beat like a substitute organ. And when the chest rose, when the body opened its eyes, I stumbled back, because the face staring up wasn't just mine. It was me from another cycle, hollow-eyed, lips moving soundlessly before finally rasping, "You left them here." The corridor screamed alive. Every door flew open, slamming against the walls, and figures spilled out, staggering, limping, their hospital gowns stained, their eyes unfocused. Some wore my face. Some wore faces I almost recognized, my mother, my old friend, even strangers I might have seen once on the subway. They moved toward me in unison, mouths opening to speak, but instead of words, the intercom spoke for them, repeating the same message. You can't hide from what you've done. Subject MB resists. Subject MB resists. I shoved past them, hard in my throat, but the hallway warped, twisting sideways like a funhouse mirror. I found myself outside a door marked with a peeling number, 237. Not 6, not another repetition, but something new. My hand reached for the handle before I could stop it. Inside, the room was smaller than the corridor, darker, filled with the faint hum of machinery. A single bed sat in the center, and on it lay someone I knew too well. My mother, or at least the memory of her. Tubes fed into her arms, her chest rising shallowly, and at her bedside sat another version of me, head in hands, whispering words I couldn't quite catch. When I stepped closer, he turned. His face was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot, his voice ragged with something like accusation. You left her. You traded her for survival. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. It wasn't true. It couldn't be true. But the cycle isn't about what's true. It's about what's buried, what's used against me until I break. The figure in the bed exhaled one final time, the monitor flatlined, and the version of me dissolved into shadow. I reached for her, screaming, but my hands passed through the bed, through the tubes, through everything, like it had never been there at all. Only the sigil remained, glowing faintly on the sheets where her body had been. The walls convulsed. The corridor collapsed inward, folding like paper until every door and every figure merged into a single yawning darkness. The gate pulsed ahead of me, the seventh one, the void that Pixel had fought to keep shut. And for a moment I thought it would drag me through, that this was the end. But then, sharp and furious, I heard Pixel again, her yowl slicing through the intercom, cutting the recording off mid-word. Her eyes glowed at the far end of the hall, impossibly bright, and with a final hiss, the hospital dissolved, the walls snapping back into my apartment. I was on the floor again, gasping, clawing at my chest, half expecting to find it open. The apartment looked normal, or at least as normal as it ever had, but the smell of antiseptic still clung to the air, and the rules lay scattered on the floor where I'd dropped them. One of them had changed again. Where it once read, "Do not open what cannot be closed," another line now glared back at me. "Do not trust the faces you know." I stared at the words until my vision blurred, heart pounding, the echo of the intercom still lodged in my skull. Subject MB resists. They wanted me to resist. They wanted me to fight back until I exhausted myself, until I broke. And the worst part was, the face I had seen, the one accusing me, looked more like me than any reflection ever had. The rule had burned itself into my mind. Do not trust the faces you know. I repeated it under my breath like a prayer, tracing the words with my fingers until the ink bled onto my skin. But when the gates want to test you, rules are only bait waiting for you to stumble. Tonight, I stumbled. It began with a knock. Soft at first, like fingertips brushing wood, then louder, insistent, until the door shuddered against its hinges. I froze in the middle of the apartment, the memory of the motel's rule flashing back. Do not open the door, no matter what. But this wasn't the motel. This was the apartment. This was different. And the knock was accompanied by something worse. A voice. Not distorted, not alien, not threatening. Familiar. My mother. "Michael," she called, her tone trembling, weary, exactly as I remembered it from when I was a child, and she'd stayed up waiting for me to come home. "Please, it's me. Let me in." My chest clenched so hard I couldn't breathe. I knew it wasn't real. I'd seen her die in the hospital corridor, had watched her body dissolve into nothing but a glowing sigil. And yet the voice carried weight, memory, comfort, a sound I hadn't allowed myself to hear in years. The rule screamed inside me, do not trust the faces you know, but rules are fragile things when memory claws through your defenses. The knock grew desperate, her voice cracked. "They won't let me rest, Michael. You left me there. Please don't leave me again." I was shaking when I reached for the handle, my mind telling me to stop, my body refusing to obey. The metal burned cold against my palm, but I pulled anyway, and the door swung wide. For an instant, it was her, standing in the hallway, shoulders hunched, eyes tired but alive. My mother, as clear and real as the last day I saw her. Relief surged through me, so sharp it hurt. I wanted to fall into her arms, to tell her everything, to beg her forgiveness. But then she smiled, and the smile stretched, too wide, too wrong, her lips splitting into cracks that revealed nothing but blackness underneath. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white, and her voice deepened into something guttural, layered. Subject MB breaks the rule. I staggered back, heart seizing, but the door slammed shut behind her without me touching it. The apartment folded, peeling like wallpaper to reveal another corridor, another gate. This one wasn't the hospital. It wasn't the subway. It was something new, a fusion of both, a hybrid cycle. Doors lined either side, each one swinging open to reveal figures stepping out. People I knew, or thought I knew. My mother again. My father, though he'd been dead for years. Old friends, co-workers, neighbors, even Pixel, padding forward on silent paws, her head tilting in that familiar way. All of them wore the right faces. All of them spoke with the right voices. But when they smiled, the darkness beneath split through. Their words overlapped, merging into a single chant. You can't trust us. You can't trust yourself. I backed into the wall, chest heaving, whispering the rule to myself over and over. Do not trust the faces you know. Do not trust the faces you know. But it was too late. I had already broken it, and the punishment wasn't their presence. It was mine. Because when I turned, when I looked for escape, the face staring back at me from the end of the corridor was my own. Not hollow, not burned, not broken like the others, whole, alive, exactly me as I was now. He stepped forward, calm, confident, the opposite of the trembling wreck I had become. His eyes locked on mine, steady and sharp, and his mouth curved into a smile that was almost kind. I'm the one who remembers, he said softly, and hearing my own voice say those words made my stomach twist. You're the failure, the incomplete copy. You were never meant to survive. The others pressed closer, their faces brushing against mine, their whispers filling my ears until I couldn't tell where one ended and another began. My other self reached out, hand steady, and pressed his palm against my chest. Fire seared through me, the sigil flaring to life beneath my ribs, brighter and sharper than ever before. I screamed, clawing at him, but my hands passed through his skin like smoke, sinking into me, burning me from within. You left her. You left all of them, he whispered, his words carving themselves into my skull. Every cycle, you abandon them. Every cycle, you run. You're not Michael Brennan. You're just the test subject that forgot how to quit. The corridor spun. The faces blurred, multiplied, until the walls themselves were made of them, every surface lined with people I had known, people I had lost, every one of them chanting, failure, failure, failure. My other self leaned closer, his breath cold against my ear, and whispered the words that hollowed me out. Cycle 48 is the last. The floor cracked beneath me, the tiles glowing red, heat flooding upward as though the entire building was on fire. The faces melted, dripping into the cracks, their voices warping into screams. I dropped to my knees, clutching my chest, certain my heart was about to burst. Pixel yowled from somewhere in the dark, her cry distorted, fractured, as if even she couldn't reach me this time. And then silence. A silence so complete it felt like suffocating. The corridor, the faces, the other. Self. Gone. I was alone, collapsed on the floor of my apartment, gasping for air. The rules lay scattered beside me, the ink still shifting, and a new line burned its way across the paper as I watched. You broke it. Now we remember for you. I stared until the words blurred with tears, the sigil still burning against my chest, the echo of my own voice whispering in my ear. Cycle 48 is the last. When the silence finally broke, it wasn't with a sound, but with the faint scrape of paper. I lay sprawled on the floor, chest still burning, breath jagged, when my eyes caught the edge of something jutting out from beneath the couch. It shouldn't have been there. I'd vacuumed under it 100 times, had checked every corner of this apartment searching for hidden rot. But now, there it was. A book. My hands shook as I pulled it free. The cover was leather, cracked, blackened at the edges as if scorched, the spine warped like it had been through fire. Dust clung to it in layers too thick for something that had supposedly been hiding in my apartment all this time. I turned it over, my stomach twisting, because the initials burned into the front weren't foreign. M.B., my name. I told myself not to open it, that it was just another trick, another gate bleeding through, another test meant to drag me deeper. But my fingers had a will of their own. The cover creaked, brittle as bone, and the first page greeted me with handwriting I knew too well. My own. Jagged, frantic, the strokes of someone writing as though the act itself was the only thing keeping them alive. Cycle 47, Day 2. If you're reading this, it means you resisted too long. Don't waste time asking who wrote it. It was you. It's always been you. My vision blurred. I traced the letters with trembling fingers, comparing them to the scribbles on the shifting rules. Identical. It wasn't just a trick. This was me. I flipped faster, each page slamming open with the weight of its ink. Do not count the gates aloud. They listen. Do not open what cannot be closed. You've learned that the hard way before. Do not trust the faces you know. They wear what you miss. Every rule I'd been given, every warning I thought was imposed on me by something external, was scrawled here. Sometimes dozens of times across a single page, like mantras. And not just rules. Full confessions. Pages describing the subway platform, the girl in white, the hospital corridor, even the motel. My hands trembled as I read about events I had lived only nights ago, written in detail before they happened. Or had they happened before, in another cycle? The words blurred, overlapping, sometimes written on top of each other in layers of desperation. Pixel is the anchor. Protect her. The girl is you. You are the girl. Don't let the seventh gate open. Cycle 48 is the last. That last line was written again and again, covering nearly 3 whole pages. The ink pressed so hard it tore the paper. Cycle 48. The words my other self had whispered in the corridor, the ones that still echoed in my chest. I was Cycle 48. The journal confirmed it. I flipped further, frantic, searching for some answer, some crack in the pattern that would show me how to break it. But the pages grew stranger the deeper I went. Sentences cut off halfway, as though the writer had been interrupted. Paragraphs where the handwriting changed, sharper, steadier, like another version of me had taken the pen. And drawings, sketches of the gates, crude but unmistakable, their iron frames warped into the shape of ribs, spines, jaws. One page showed all 7 stacked together, the 7th gate inked in heavy black, its interior nothing but void. Beside it, scrawled in frantic letters, "You can't close what you are." My chest seized. Not close what you opened, close what you are. Pixel's low growl snapped my head up. She sat near the doorway, eyes glowing faintly again, her fur bristling. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring past me at the mirror on the wall. The bathroom mirror, where one of the gates had once flickered. The surface shimmered just faintly, like heat haze. And in the glass, I saw a movement. Not my reflection, another me. He was writing. Bent over a table, pen scratching furiously against paper, lips moving in rhythm with the words spilling into the journal in my hands. My throat went dry as I turned back to the page, watching as fresh ink bled into it, letters forming right before my eyes. Do not look at me too long. You'll remember what you did. I dropped the book like it had burned me, heart hammering so hard it hurt. My reflection, no, the version of me trapped in the mirror, slowly lifted its head. And for the first time, its eyes met mine. Hollow, endless, filled with something I couldn't name but had always felt in the pit of my stomach. Pixel hissed, yowled, but I couldn't move. The figure in the glass smiled faintly, the same almost kind smile the other me had worn in the corridor. And then the words appeared across the mirror itself, traced in fog as though breathed by something inside. Stop resisting. We only need one of us to remember. The room dimmed. The journal snapped shut on its own, the leather binding tightening like a clenched fist. The sigil on my chest burned hotter than ever, searing through fabric, its glow reflected perfectly in the mirror where my other self stood waiting. And then, before the darkness swallowed everything, the final words scrawled themselves across the last page of the journal in my lap, jagged and final. This is where it ends. Cycle 48 collapses. Prepare.